So welcome to the next session on not advanced actually. It's optimal AdWords campaign tracking here at Google Conversion University Day. My name is Stephanie, and I am an AdWords specialist and one of our analytics gurus here in the AdWords department. So during the next hour, I'm going to be covering a variety of topics, but mainly I want you guys to walk away with a better idea of how to improve and optimize the performance of your AdWords account using the data that you have in Google Analytics. So hopefully you'll get a little bit more insight with actionable tips and takeaways so that you can help improve the ROI and overall AdWords spending. So this is what the agenda looks like. I'll begin by briefly reintroducing AdWords, a product you guys are likely all very familiar with, and then talk a little bit about integrating the two products, how easy this process is and how this can benefit you. And then I'm going to dive into walking through some of the more useful AdWords-related reports, what these reports are, where you can find them, and how you can use them in a way that's meaningful for you. And then lastly, I'll talk about some of the many ways you can optimize your AdWords account using the data that you have in analytics. And then at the end, if you guys have any questions, you are more than welcome to ask me or any of the other specialists that are here today. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So I imagine you guys all know what AdWords is, otherwise you guys likely wouldn't be here today. But I wanted to begin by just briefly speaking to this product to reintroduce some of the basics for those of you guys who are less familiar with it or may not be the ones who are directly managing your company's AdWords accounts. So right now, your AdWords ads appear on our search results pages as well as on our vast search and content network sites in a variety of rich media ad formats, including text ads, image ads, video ads, mobile ads, local business ads, among other ad formats, right? You're probably familiar with at least some, if not all, of these very abbreviated list of tools that you can use to help optimize and manage your account. You know, the ability to target your ad by location at the country level, at the region level, customized even, right? Let's say you have a very local audience and you just want to look at people within a 25-mile radius of your particular office location. You can do that with customized targeting. You can create a polygon. You know, you can target accordingly the way that works for you. Budgeting and bids. You all probably know that you can also choose to select how you want your ad to be delivered throughout the day. Do I want to evenly display it throughout the day, depending on the traffic that I'm getting? Do I want to use up my budget as quickly as possible? These are all things that you might think about. Keyword matching options, we all are probably familiar with this. Using brackets or using quotes, negative keywords, to filter out the kinds of irrelevant traffic that you don't want coming to your site. And then lastly, I threw up ad scheduling and position preference because I'm going to be referencing these later on in my presentation. These are just some helpful tools to help you guys determine when you want your ad to show or prefer when you want your ad to show and in what ranges, what ad ranks, and that sort of thing. Then I'd like to speak to some other newer favorites that you guys might be less familiar with. So how many of you guys have paper action ads? Okay, so at least some of you, a good percentage. This is really cool. I personally really like this ad format because now you guys have the ability to pay for actions that you guys really care about, right? This ties into a lot about what we're talking about today. Advertisers now, with this new pricing model, you can define the user action on your site that you want to pay for. So that could be a lead, that could be a sign up, that could be a purchase, could be a page view, it could be so many other things. Print and audio, I know Avinash spoke to this briefly and how unexciting offline is. I personally think it's quite cool. Now, AdWords is extending into new space, and we have the ability to target print ads, audio, and other ad formats that are coming out, maybe. But we can also use analytics to track online lift with offline, right? So we can talk a little bit about this in more detail later, but basically if you want to use vanity URLs and redirects and campaign tracking variables, you can track to see how effective are my offline campaigns working for me online. And then lastly, I just threw up there the placement performance report. Doesn't really necessarily relate to those other features, but I think it's kind of cool because we've gotten a lot of feedback about the transparency as to where your ads are appearing on the content network. Where are they appearing? What sites are they appearing? How are they converting? And while this doesn't provide a holistic view of that necessarily, this does give you guys a good snapshot as to what kinds of domains and URLs your ads are appearing on, how are they converting, as well as all that click cost, impression data, information, etc. So I mentioned these tools because at least a great majority of them you can use in combination with analytics to better understand the changes that you make in your AdWords account. Now I understand a lot of you guys work with account managers, and so bearing that in mind, let's talk about integrating the two products and what I call a very googly marriage. AdWords is the girl because she makes all the money. I'm the only female speaker today, so I wanted to throw that out there. But anyway, so as you guys know, analytics measures the quality of your traffic across a number of different marketing initiatives, right? And I'm here to talk about AdWords. So what makes AdWords so cool? What makes it so easy? Well, the way we do it, the way we offer it is if you just link the two products, we automatically import all your AdWords cost information directly into your analytics accounts. You guys probably know this already, but I'm going to speak to this briefly to reinforce and drive this point home because it is very, very nice. Okay, so we have linking here, we have cost data, and we have auto tagging. So with linking, the process is really simple, right? You guys probably know if you have an analytics account, you have an AdWords account, you just go into your analytics tab in your AdWords account, you follow the prompts, select your account from the drop-down menu, and you link the accounts accordingly. If you don't have an account, then that's where you can create a new account. Before you actually do this, you want to make sure you have the same email login on both accounts. If that's not the case, you can always add the AdWords email login as an account administrator. You guys probably know how that works. So with auto tagging, what is auto tagging? We spoke to this briefly earlier, but essentially we have the ability to automatically tag the destination URLs of your AdWords ads, right? So the way that we get your AdWords keyword information, your campaign information, and how we tie that to a particular visit, and so that we can analyze the cost of that visit, the revenue, the return, et cetera, on that visit, well, we do a lot of that with auto tagging. And all you have to do on your end is, if you don't really understand the back end of how that works, is just click on the box and enable auto tagging. And so that's one step that's involved in linking. So for example, right here we have the URL mysite.com, and what auto tagging does is it appends this URL parameter at the end, the Google click ID equals blah, 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 blah. And that's how we grab all that information and import it into our analytics account. Cost data. So cost data, similarly, it provides us with all that keyword information, all that campaign information. But this also enables analytics to return all the ROI info that you want, right? That whole end-to-end view of, so I'm getting traffic through my AdWords ads. Well, so what? What's the return on this? It gives you a better holistic look at how your AdWords spending is working for you. So pretty cool. And all you guys do, yes, what's up?
How does that cost data improve over what you have in Google AdWords with tagging?
I'm sorry, how does it?
How does the cost data or the ROI data within analytics improve over what you already have in AdWords?
Oh, well, in AdWords, you don't have the ROI information. So you'll have, for example, I can speak to this later when I show you the actual reports. So in AdWords, you have your click information, your CPC information, your impression data, that sort of thing. But in analytics, you'll get the actual return on each keyword, the revenue per click, the margin, et cetera. But I can show you in more detail as well. Yes?
If you have an MCC account,
Mm-hmm.
you link to the MCC account, you have to do this for every separate account within it.
So we actually recommend that you don't link it to the MCC. Yeah, it seems like somewhat of a manual process if someone wants to correct me here, but my understanding that we advise you guys to link to each client account just because at the MCC level there's actually no content there, right? That's just a master account that handles all of the client accounts. Cool. All right. Any other questions about that? Okay, let's dive into the meaty part of this presentation, identifying some of the more useful AdWords-related reports. So I want to preface this with, it depends really what your goals are when you want to identify what are the more useful reports for you, right? Of course, as Avinash touched on, if you're not an e-commerce site, you're probably focused on a different segment of reports, looking at visitor recency, visitor loyalty, et cetera. If you're an e-commerce site, you might be more interested in the funnel process. Are people converting? What kinds of products are they purchasing? And so forth. but I'd like to introduce some of the more AdWords-specific reports and how you guys can utilize them in a way that might be useful for you. So to start off with the search engines report. This report is interesting because you get a good overview of how your paid channels are working versus your non-paid. So you can see here, we're looking at the paid snapshot. And you can see all your top performing keywords, right? Specifically, let's look at the example nonprofit jobs. Nonprofit jobs, so the average time on site for this keyword is about 10 minutes. The percentage of new visitors, about 53%. And the bounce rate's about 15. Let's compare that to the natural search listings. So you can see that the percent of new visitors is actually lower and the bounce rate is lower. So I'm not telling you that just because maybe your return for this keyword in AdWords spending isn't worth keeping the keyword. What I'm saying is these are things that you want to think about when you want to optimize, and you want to refine your keyword list. If the bounce rate for a keyword in the natural search listings is a little bit lower or significantly lower, or the percentage of new visitors is lower, that means people are actually coming back to your site, looking at other pages, and they're not even doing that through necessarily your paid channels, right? So knowing that, what do you want to do with your keywords? These are good questions to ask yourself. Let's look at the bounce rate report. Avinash's favorite, the sexiest metric ever. So you can segment, actually, the bounce rate metric in a vast majority of reports. It's not actually a specific report, right, the bounce rate, for those of you guys who are very familiar with this metric. I'm looking at the AdWords campaign report, and I've just segmented the data here at the top. So you can see the graph, and you can see an overall downward trend. At the bottom here, you can see the bounce rate for all these campaigns, right? Red is bad, green is good. You can see how the AdWords campaigns in here are performing relative to the site average bounce rate. Let's look at the keyword level. You get a really granular view of how the keywords are performing as well for the bounce rate. Using this information, you might ask yourself, so people searching on this keyword, getting to my site, they're leaving quickly. Why might that be? If they're searching on volunteer, are they not finding the right volunteer opportunities? Are my links not big enough? Do they have to navigate 3 steps into the site before they find what they want? How relevant is my site to my keyword? Questions you want to ask yourself. And knowing that, maybe I want to remove or regroup my keywords and my ad groups and my campaigns. Now let's look at the AdWords campaign report. So this is the dashboard, as you guys know already. If I use this report all the time, it might be a good idea to include it right here in this interface, right? This way I don't have to dive into the sidebar and figure out where exactly my report is, how can I find it, I know all that stuff. I get confused. So it might be a good idea to just put this report here if this is a metric or if these are a particular set of data that you look at frequently. Otherwise, you go over here and you navigate to the traffic sources, and you go under AdWords campaigns, and you can find it there. So all of the reports, or actually a great majority of the reports that I'm talking about today, you can find under traffic sources. I don't expect you guys to remember the step-by-step instructions, but just to give you guys a better idea of where I'm working. Okay. So let's look at the AdWords campaign report. Actually, let's take a step back. So in the Site tab, you get all the basic information, right? The visits, the page views per visit, the percent of new visits, the bounce rate, etc. Speaking to what I mentioned earlier, when you import cost data and when you have auto tagging enabled, you get a much more comprehensive view of how your AdWords ads are working for you. So in your AdWords account, which I mentioned earlier, you get all this stuff, right? With cost data imported, with auto tagging enabled, and your accounts linked, you get all of this. So you can see the revenue and whatnot, the visits. You get a bigger picture of how things are working. So as you can see, the Google store, we're not making any money, right? Okay. Now let's talk about the keywords positions report. This is a really unique report. It's actually one of my favorites because I think it offers a lot of valuable and unique information. So before I begin and explain what this report is, who here thinks, well, let me put it this way. What do you guys think is the most optimal AdWords ad rank position on the search results page?
Depends on the site.
Smart man. Depends on the site, right? Some might think it's the first position because that's where your eye navigates. That's where you're more likely to click, maybe. right? It depends, right, on the site, and it depends on what the goals of your site are. So this is what the keywords positions report looks like. So let's take a look. On the left-hand side, you've got all your keywords in order by visit, right? So for the keyword volunteer, during this particular time frame, this site received about 11,600 visits. And on the right-hand side, you can see how it's segmented by ad rank. So out of that total, it received the first position about 5,000 times, 3,000 times, 400 times, so forth. It's interesting to note here that you would think that those 3 positions might receive the most traffic, but actually the third position above the natural search listings only received 423 visits, right? So you can segment all this by different metrics. You can look at the average time on site, different goals. You can segment it by your first goal, your second goal, and so forth. And you can also segment it by conversion rate. Let's take a look at this. So this is really interesting. I imagine most of you guys measure the effectiveness of your traffic by conversion rates, right? So you might want to know, okay, so when my ad ranks in this position, how does it convert? So typically, you might assume it might be in the top positions. And you're right in that you want it to be in, generally in the first page, right? If no one's going to even see your ad, they're probably not going to click on it, let alone convert. So in this particular example, you see that the top converting ad ranks for this keyword during this time range in this auction is the 3rd position, above the natural search listings, and also on the right-hand side, the 5th position, right? So this doesn't mean necessarily that now you know, okay, it converts the best in the 5th position. I want to use position preference and specify that my ad only appear in this position. That's not the case. You know, the idea here is that, okay, so now you know, maybe I don't need to necessarily stay in the top 2 positions. Maybe I can even lower my CPC bid, you know? Of course, you want to optimize so that your ads are always usually appearing on the first page of search results, but maybe you don't need to necessarily target for the first or second position. It depends what your goals are, right? If you're CNN or BBC or any other type of news site, the goal of your site isn't necessarily to convert users in the conventional sense. Maybe you just want to retain them. So in this case, the most valuable metric for you is the average time on site. And you can see in this example that actually the 8th position has an average time of site about 6 minutes, which is significantly longer, right, than most of the other ad ranks. So knowing that, this was an example in which you might lower your CPC bid, right? Or you might think about how you want to adjust your cost per click bids to target maybe a range of ad positions rather than a particular ad rank. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. All right, now let's talk a little bit about optimizing your AdWords account using the data that you have in analytics. So again, I just want to reinforce the fact that the way that you decide to restructure, you and your account manager or whoever it is that's managing your AdWords account, the decisions that go into these sort of analyses largely involve you evaluating what are your goals. And again, if you're an e-commerce site, these are some of the metrics you might take into account: visits, transactions, funnel process, so forth, right? If you're a lead generation site, you're going to have different objectives in mind. You'll want to look at user registrations, maybe funnel conversions, drop-offs, downloads, et cetera, et cetera. If you're a branding site, you want to keep people on your site. You want them to view your site, read your site, things like that. So you'll look at visitor loyalty, the depth of their visit, how frequently they visit, et cetera. And so with that information, you can choose maybe, let's say, your top 10 performing reports for you. Customize that, put it on your dashboard, and visit those. And you can perform actionable items from there. Let's talk a little bit about location targeting. So most of you guys, I imagine, are probably curious as to where the traffic on your site is coming from. What countries, what cities, et cetera, et cetera. This is a great report, a pretty basic report, but it's a great place to start to analyze that sort of user behavior, right? So if you find that you're getting a lot of converting traffic from a particular city or a particular country even that you hadn't expected to, you could create a new AdWords campaign, target it to that particular location, create a theme of relevant keywords, as well as ad text variations, and optimize on the fact that you know that you're getting converting traffic from that city. If you find that you're not getting very low converting traffic from a particular location, you could also remove that from your AdWords campaigns as well. This is also a great tool for offline because you can see at a very local level, let's take a look. You can see at a very local level where your traffic is coming from. So on top of local business ads, you might take into account, maybe I want to do print and audio there too in these cities, right? How do I reach these audiences in the most effective way? It allows you to ask yourself a lot of creative questions about how to target your audience at a very local level. So you just go back to your AdWords account. So either you or your account manager can just go ahead onto your Edit Campaign Settings page and make these adjustments back in your AdWords account. Let's look at ad scheduling and budgeting. So this is really great because now with the latest release, we have a lot of options to segment your data by the hourly view, particularly in the visitor, a lot of the visitor reports, as well as the goals and e-commerce data, right? So what I have here in this snapshot is the ability to segment your page views per visit by the hour. So this is interesting because you can see, so how does traffic change throughout the day? By time zone. You might even want to use this with the location, the geomap overlay to see how they correlate, right? In this example, you can see how the traffic varies by weekdays and weekends, right? It's expected. There's an overlap, but there's a slight difference. Most people during the work week are probably browsing the site a little bit earlier on in the day versus the weekends. You can segment this by goal conversions too. So this is great because with this information, you might want to think about ways to create new campaigns, enable ad scheduling to optimize on the particular hours of the day that you're receiving converting traffic. If you find that in the afternoon between the hours of 3 and 6, that's when most people are converting, you might want to budget accordingly knowing that, right? So you go back into your AdWords campaign, edit settings, you enable ad scheduling, and then over here, you can see how you can choose to segment your traffic during the day. And even if you want, with advanced bidding options, you can up your bid to optimize on highly converting traffic during those particular hours, which is really cool, I think. You can do it by weekend, weekday, morning, afternoon, and so forth. Optimizing ad text and ad delivery. So the ad versions report. Are you guys familiar with this report? Probably a large portion of you. This report is particularly useful if you have ads of different headlines. If you're using the same headline and you have different content, then there's a different way to track the effectiveness of those ads. But for this one, if you have different ads, you want to figure out what works for you. So does I want to volunteer work the best? Or I want to volunteer ? Or do you want to volunteer, or whatever. What catchy phrases or what call to action phrases work best for me? This is a great report to kind of figure out the nuances of those things. What's also great about this report is you can segment it by goal, because different ads with different headlines are going to be more effective for different goals. In this example, you can see that these ads, let's see, for new user activation, you can see that I want to volunteer is performing pretty well, right? It's a green bar, about 19%, I think, 18%. So it's performing pretty well compared to the site average. But when you look at the index search, you can see that it's not doing so hot. Okay, so knowing that, what do you do? So you might want to create a new campaign, new ad group, put those ads with destination URLs that target those particular goals. You might want to change your landing pages, knowing this and being able to utilize that information in that way, right? And then when you go back into your AdWords account, you can just go ahead. And if you don't have someone else who's already making these kind of manual changes for you, you can do it directly in your AdWords account with the copy remove AdWords tool or through AdWords editor. Yeah?
Is the ad text report, can you segment by ad group? Because it seems like you're comparing lots of ads from different
You can actually do it. So the ad versions one, the one that I showed you, will compare all ads that you have. If you want to compare it by ad group, you can go to the AdWords campaign report, which I would show you, but these are screenshots. But yes, you can. I can definitely talk to you about that later. Okay, great. So lastly, I feel like I've gone through this very quickly. Does anyone have any other questions about anything I've talked about? Okay. So key takeaways and tips. So you want to ask yourself what works for you, right? I've made suggestions, some of them pretty generic, but really it depends on what the goals and objectives of your business are. You can't find the right report unless you have a good understanding of what those goals are. So again, you want to be able to set goals. That's the most qualitative way, the quantitative and qualitative way to measure the effectiveness of your advertising. If you don't set goals, you just have a lot of data in your reports. You don't really know what to do with it. So firstly, remember, cross-segment your data. Look at it in context, right? Don't just look at the bounce rate, as Avinash mentioned. Don't just look at the page views or the depth of visit. Look at them all together in one picture. This will give you a better understanding of how your advertising is performing for you. Also use the date range comparison tool. Compare two sets of date ranges. You might see atypical behavior over any given instance because of a holiday, because of a promotion, so forth, right? If you're looking at July, August, September, look at the previous 3 months. Compare that to the previous year, and then make analyses from there. Also, I'm going to push it again, utilize the hourly reporting. This is great. Take advantage of the fact that you can see how your traffic changes throughout the day. Use this in correlation with your location targeting settings to figure out the best way you want to optimize on the traffic that you're receiving. Remember to set goals. This is really important. And you can monitor how your goals are performing by setting scheduled reports, right? It's one thing if you're just setting scheduled reports, receiving them, not doing anything with it. Do this, but see how your goals are performing and make changes. So regardless of what your goals and objectives are, you always want to hone in on the traffic that's working for you. So one great tip I have is, look at the top 10 referral sites that are giving you converting traffic to your site. Create site-targeted campaigns to those sites. You can do this in AdWords, right? And optimize on the fact that those sites are giving you traffic that's turning into real results. And then lastly, utilize analytics to help you make better decisions about not only the tools that I talked about, but all of the changes that you make in your AdWords account. This will give you a better understanding of not only how you're spending, your AdWords ads, but also how they're performing for you.